Hello viewers. Well, last week Sega were in London showing off their new Daytona 3 arcade machine. You can see a selection of the arcade systems here. You can see them all there. Of course, not called Daytona 3 on the stand, not showing Daytona 3 on the start screen, I'll point out. Rather interestingly, you can see it's been changed there to just Daytona USA Championship, which is an interesting change to the name, perhaps based on some of the negative feedback the title has received so far. I saw a video last year and at the time I thought it looked absolutely terrible, absolutely dire. I can't tell you how bad and how disappointed I was to see how it looked, but I wanted to jump on the machine and see what it was like, see how it played. So here I am jumping on. There's a little camera that films you in the top corner there. Something that was introduced to the old Daytona cabs a few years ago. And of course I go on for a quick race. Or do I try championship? I see the new championship option there and I think, you know, I'm going to try the championship option, go for that, see how I get on. So we have the two transmissions. Well, I'll go with manual because as someone who's an experienced Daytona player, which I am, I've played hundreds of hours on this game over the years on the various different versions. I love Daytona. So I'm on it now. Same music, pretty much. And over the line, and suddenly as I'm driving, whoa! What's happening here? Oh, that's a bit strange. So I've tried to shift down, and what's going on with the gears? I'm looking at my gears, and it's going to an auto gearbox. It's just changed from manual to automatic. I don't know what was going on there, but as soon as it gave me control, the rear wheels just spun up and sent me off. I'm going around this corner and I can't find the handling. I'm thinking, where am I with this wheel? What's going on? And I can see there, obviously I'm changing because I saw the needle moving and thinking, oh, I haven't changed gear, so it must need a shift. And obviously I hadn't realised at this point it's gone to auto because it wasn't entirely expected. So you can see big old Sonic on the wall there, the visuals. It's like a drab version, isn't it? The colours are drab, the look is drab, there's not enough shininess, there's not enough reflection, there's not enough detail, the road is flat and I don't know, there's a magic that's missing. And already it started to creep in my mind which version of Daytona this is modelled after. I knew there was something wrong with it, but I'll come back to that in just a moment. So I'm doing my laps. I'm really not happy at this point. I'm not happy with the way it's handling. I'm trying various different techniques to go into the final corner. So when you go into that final corner, there are various techniques where you can brake a certain way, you can decide to do a little gear shift, you can go flat out and touch the wall on the exit if you're really pinpoint accurate. That was always the super quickest way. So a few months ago, let's talk about where my feelings have come from, why I feel so strongly on this. I found an old Daytona arcade cab a few months ago, not knowing Daytona 3 was coming, and I played it and I still enjoyed it, you know. All right, so the skills were a little bit rusty, but it was all there. It all came back to me. I knew what gear I should be in. I knew how to drive it. I knew how to brake for the corners, you know. And admittedly here, this was on a flimsy arcade machine that was damaged. The brake was just all over the place. It was really destroyed, but still I could play it. I could enjoy it. And it all came back to me. There was a feeling, a look, of visuals, the colour, the vibrancy, the detail. So much there that made Daytona special. It still brings back to me what it was like in the arcade years ago. I mean, seeing Daytona on the original red sit-down cabinets lined up that they first showed in Tokyo months beforehand was amazing. I can't tell you how amazing it was to see it. So back to the arcade machine now, and we've got one of the new courses. I think it's called Lakeside. I can't remember the exact name of it, but basically it's the advanced course back to front, and it just wasn't feeling right. I mean, I didn't know this was the advanced course when I was driving it. I thought to myself, well, new course, that's it really. Again, visually, it's like a cartoon. It looks like a PC game running on an old gen graphics card. It just lacked, look at it, it just lacks any kind of identity. I think when you think Daytona 2 came out and looked, you know, pretty crazy when it came out, Daytona 2, Sega went almost too far in that direction of craziness, but they did something colourful and wonderful. Here it's all over the place, so I couldn't get the car to grip. It was sliding around. It was just all over the place. And I was thinking, what is going on? What am I missing here when it comes to the handling? So straight away, I've not liked the visuals. I've not liked the handling. I've not liked the position how I'm sitting in the cab. I haven't even got to the cab yet. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But everything just looked very plain. It didn't look very special. This is, £15,000 worth of arcade hardware or whatever it is. It's very expensive. So you can see what you have is you've got the original course as well. So you've got the original Daytona courses as well as 3 new courses modelled on the original design. So I thought, well, let's try again. You've just seen me driving the original game with manual gears. I know what to do. Let's do exactly the right thing here, I'm thinking. Let's settle down and enjoy it. So I'm looking at the new mountains. This all looks much worse in person. The textures on the mountains are pixelated, very poor, almost like voxels really. They're so voxel technology in terms of the sort of pixelation on them. It's very old-fashioned. It's like a game that was made years ago for the PC. And I started driving this, and then that's when it came to me. I'm like, oh, look, trying to keep the car straight. It's moving like that because there's a massive dead zone in the middle of the wheel. And and then as soon as you get a bit of sensitivity, it just flies like there. I just can't get the car to go where I want it to go. So going into these corners, and now I know how I want to brake and attack these corners. And it's sort of there. There's sort of some elements there, but it doesn't look as good. As I say, the road looks so flat and like a plain carpet that's been rolled around it. Lacks any life. When you think of what we can do, just imagine if you had, a couple of GTX 1080s in each cab, how good this could look with maximum technology when you're spending that much on an arcade cab. I do remember arcades will be spending upward of £150,000 to install a layout of these. As I transfer between my camera and the GoPro I'm wearing, just to give you guys various points of view. Even the tunnel, it just doesn't look very special, does it? It really hasn't moved on much in 22 years. 23 years since the original concept of the first game. And that's when it came to me with the handling. I thought there's something wrong with the handling. I can't seem to get a hold on this. And I realised it was handling more like Daytona Circuit Championship Edition than it was Daytona Arcade. And that's really how it felt to me when I was racing around. The car felt rubbery and it didn't feel right. And it reminded me just of playing that game years ago. I remember buying that game and being so disappointed and taking it back, because I remember playing Daytona to death on the Sega Saturn, and then playing, the graphics had pop up and were a bit rubbish, but they handled really well. It played really well. It played wonderfully. And then we were thinking, wow, we're going to have a version with new graphics, and the handling was dire, and it kind of felt like playing that. It looks and feels like Daytona Circuit Championship Edition. And it really was very poor. So, on the one hand, I have transferable skills there. So I was able to drive it, and do okay. With a few runs, no doubt, I'd be winning that, and getting my name on the leaderboard constantly. I thought I'd go through the whole leaderboard procedure, because why not? We're checking out what the game is actually like. It took a picture there of my forehead, which is nice. Yes, so I thought, well, I think I do some multiplayer races. I'm doing some quick races. I did a whole selection of races and trying to form my opinion. So there's expert races coming soon. It wouldn't let me choose them, but I thought, well, let's just try anyway. And now we're going to look at the beginner classic. So identical to the original track. This is what we saw earlier. There's also Daytona, actual Daytona. So let's see how we get on. So, having learned before my car just spinning off, I thought, let's have another go. And look at the way the car moves. My goodness me, I'm like, what can I do? I just can't stop the car. It's going to crash into the car in front or hit the wall. There's really nothing I can do to change that. Look at me moving the wheel here. Look, I'm moving the wheel and the car's not even moving. The dead zone is so big on the wheel. How can you play the game when it's made that way? I just don't know why this game is being shown. I really don't. Graphically it's dated and dull. The steering is so poorly implemented. with dead zone, oversensitivity, poor handling implemented into the cars and the way they're handling there. Let's talk about the cab. The brake didn't feel right. The seat was upright, like you were driving a bus rather than a racing car. Look how high I am compared to the screen. Now, I'm tall, but it was the same for everybody. It's like you were driving a bus rather than a race car. And look at the gear stick. It's only got up and down now. It doesn't even have the four-way shifter you had in the original. The satisfying four-way H-box that you had in the original is gone. That, for me, was part of the identity of those cabs, and it's gone. And it's a shame, you know, that they don't have an H-shifter in there still. That was all part of it. Even now, make it a six-way gearbox. You know, do it. You know, add that level of difficulty if people want to play manual, because a manual car was a bit faster and gives you that advantage. Fantastic. It adds to it. Do something new. Take it forward. Nothing here takes it forward. The screen also was quite washed out colours-wise. You can see it more from this camera than the other camera. It wasn't really defined, wasn't really clear. The trees looked like cartoony. They didn't have a great deal of detail to them. You know, there were so many things that Daytona got right at the time in terms of the defined solidity of its environments, and this doesn't do it right. Even the look of the cars, and I'm going to talk about this when we get onto the next circuit, eventually looking at the actual Daytona circuit in a moment, my thoughts on some of that. So that's goal. Better this time. Obviously, you know, getting back into the swing of things. I mean, I completed Daytona hundreds of times in the arcade and just checking my cameras working there. Back in the arcade and, you know, on the Sega Saturn, on the Sega Dreamcast, on the Xbox 360, you know. But in the arcade, I was a massive, massive fan. Any time I would see a Daytona arcade cab, I would jump on. Just like last year when I saw one, I'm like, Daytona, I'm on it. Let's just dust off those old rusty skills. So for me, the fact of a Daytona coming, it should be amazing graphics, big, bold cars, really loud audio. You know, you had that sound of the engine, really loud in the arcade. And there was an intensity, you know, when you were playing multiplayer Daytona, big screen, big crowds of people. I mean, that's a different thing. We had crowds of people watching in Chocodero when it first came in. When you were on there, there was easy like 80 people standing behind you watching the race. You know, it was competitive when you were winning. It felt good. This tied in with arcade gaming of old. You know, when you go to an arcade and you're good at a game, you would draw a crowd and it gave you energy. It was a wonderful energy. We don't have that in online gaming now. It's gone. Sort of have it in esports, but there's not enough, in my experience in general, there's not enough respect between esports players and the average person, but that's another subject entirely. So on to the Daytona course, the actual Daytona course. And when I played this course, I realized where the developers' focus was wrong. This is a NASCAR course. This is a NASCAR game. The NASCARs look like NASCARs. And you know, nobody cares about NASCAR outside of that part of America. When Daytona came out, yes, it was called Daytona. Yes, it was a stock car. Nobody knew about NASCAR. They didn't care about NASCAR. They didn't want it related to real life in the slightest. NASCAR was this boring simulation thing on the PC that nobody cares about outside of real fans of NASCAR. And the fact that it's included in this game, this is like a NASCAR game. This isn't Daytona anymore. This is not Daytona. This is NASCAR the game. And it's a completely different thing to what Daytona was. And I think that's the problem right there, is the identity of the game is completely wrong. And I played this and thought, well, Daytona's like from the world of Ridge Racer. It's from an arcade, vibrant, colourful, outrun style world. This is not. This is from the world of, you know, PC gaming, really, in that sense. And it looks like a PC game as well, you know, it looks like a PC. It's just not got any depth to the handling, as I try to avoid crashing cars, which completely buggers up my chance of winning the race, unfortunately, because I then lose all my momentum. And I'm not able to recover from that. So concluding this video then, my opinion was thoroughly disappointing. Daytona 3. It's not called Daytona 3 anymore, and with good reason, having played it. It doesn't need a few tweaks. It needs a completely new identity, and I don't know the development team behind it, and they won't be happy with what I've said today. but then I'm not happy with the game they've produced, and I'm not happy with the artistic sort of direction they've taken in producing this game. I think for me, it's like George Lucas trying to go back and make Star Wars. The AM2 people aren't at Sega anymore, and the people that made great games at Sega clearly have gone. Whoever this farmed out to, they don't have the connection, understanding of what made Daytona one of the greatest arcade games of all time, if not arguably the greatest arcade game of all time in terms of its heritage, its longevity, and its importance to the genre. It really was an incredible piece of software, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to talk about this on a video. So that's my thoughts on Daytona 3, and I'm going to leave you now. There'll be more arcade content to come on the channel, and there'll be more from me very soon.